Joining us now on Sports Talk ATL, Fox 5's Kelly Price, host of Rise Up Tonight and the Dirty Bird Report. Kelly, now that we have Kirk Cousins as the quarterback, the focus moves to the NFL Draft. Everyone's talking about Dallas Turner. Everyone's talking about a pass rusher. Is that the way that you are looking at it a month away from the NFL Draft?
Yeah, I mean, it's that time of year again. We're asking the Falcons to draft a pass rusher once again for the third year in a row here. I mean, I think that that's absolutely the option they have in front of them. I mean, you saw what Terry Fontenot did in free agency. I think it really gives them the flexibility to take the best player available on that defensive side of the ball because as we've seen the last couple of years, they've taken the best player available on the offensive side of the ball. So I think that's still the philosophy is still to get that best player available on that draft board. But I think it gives them, a little flexibility to get someone on the defensive side of the ball to help that side because they didn't do a ton in free agency to bolster that side of the ball. They just kind of brought back, Nate Landman, Kentavious Street, some of these kind of key guys from that 2023 defense. But I think there's still moves to be made on that side of the ball.
Yeah, I tend to think moves will be made before the draft, whether they're, they don't have to be blockbuster. And I know the cap space, they don't have much, but they can create some with restructures. And an AJ Terrell contract extension would open up some cap space. I tend to think that, correct me if maybe I'm a little wrong, they got to add to the edge room in particular, even before the draft. It doesn't have to be a marquee name like Jadeveon Clowney or, the talk of Falcons Twitter right now is Hassan Reddick, a trade for the Eagles pass rusher. But I just tend to think Dallas Turner, Latu, Jared Verse, whatever your flavor of tea is they still have to add even before that. Because like you said, Terry Fontenot, every single year, highest drafted tight end in NFL history. Drake London caught a lot of people off guard. And then when Jalen Carter even fell to him and he took Bijan Robinson, surprised everybody. If we can expect one thing from Terry Fontenot, it's a best player available and try to fill out the needs in free agency before that. Do you see another move? And again, not a marquee name or anything like that, but maybe some smaller moves?
Yeah, I mean, I think someone like the Calais Campbell and the Bud Duprees that they brought in last year, someone like that, to your point, kind of brings more depth and that if they draft, an edge rusher at number 8 overall, maybe there's not as much pressure for that guy to be the day one guy. He can kind of work with some of those other outside linebackers or defensive ends that they might bring in. The Falcons didn't have a player that was over 6.5 sacks last season. And the only two guys that did that were Calais Campbell and Bud Dupree. So, and they're, not on this roster right now. We'll see what Calais Campbell does as far as a retirement, decision in the future. But I know he told me it was going to be probably sometime in March that he might decide that. So TBD on him. I know a lot of Falcons fans would want to see him come back, but someone like that I think would be great for this defense. I mean, he brought so much leadership into that defensive, side of the ball. In addition to, he also played really well for them last year. Someone like that, I think, would be super smart for Terry Fontenot to bring in.
Yeah, well, so this is your first time on the show, Kelly, and I don't know if you know much about us, but this is an LSU show in Atlanta. We both went to LSU, and I know everyone's going to talk about the defense, and I get it. There needs to be multiple additions. I would love to have Calais Campbell back. But I'm still of this idea, and I don't think Malik Neighbors is necessarily going to be available, but I don't think you can count out the idea, as we've seen, that they will take a skill position player with the 8th overall pick in the draft. And the two guys that seem like they could be available, especially if it goes quarterback, like it's being talked about, are Malik Neighbors and Rome Odunze. And I know they got Darnell Mooney, and I know they got Rondell Moore, and I know a lot of people are saying, oh, the receiver room's a lot better. Listen, there's no way a 4th-year wide receiver in Rondell Moore on the last year of his contract, in my opinion, there's no way he's going to stop them from taking another wide receiver. There's no way Darnell Mooney is going to stop them if they have him at the top of their board. So can you speak a little bit on that? Do you think there's still a possibility, even though they made those additions, that they could go out there and get another skill position for the 4th year in a row in the top 10?
Oh, 100%. I mean, look at last year is the perfect example. They had Tyler Algier, who had an incredible year before that on their roster, and they went ahead and drafted Bijan Robinson. Now, obviously, those two guys are very different styles or flavors of running back, but running back was not a need for this team. And, there was a lot of debate about taking, running back that high and all that kind of stuff. So I think if anything we have learned from the last couple of drafts with this Terry Fontenot regime is that they're going to take the best player available regardless of need. I think that the wide receiver class, though, is super deep. And so I think that, you know, the moves they made in free agency and kind of so far this offseason have enabled them to maybe look in other directions. But I think they can also get a really quality wide receiver at the top of the second round or even later. Or, you know, I don't know who their guy is going to be that they might want to target, that they, you know, have talked to and that they're really interested in. But if they have a guy to get, they can maybe see where he falls, because this is a really deep class. And I think that if you want to get another wide receiver, you have a really good chance to get a good one later on, rather than at number 8. But I mean, to your point, if you see a certain guy fall, like, you know, into your lap, then that's another opportunity in front of you as well.
Yeah, I might have an aneurysm if Malik Neighbors falls to the 8th pick and we don't take him. I'm sorry, that's just my guy, dude. And I listen, I get it. You know, they definitely don't need a wide receiver. It's not the most pressing need.
Right.
But when I look at this draft, that is the guy that I look at all the wide receivers, including Marvin Harrison. And I think a lot of NFL teams are kind of, at least from the reports, whether there's smoke or whether there's fire, kind of falling in love with Neighbors and having him as 1A, 1B. But I still think with the run on quarterbacks, you got a shot at getting him or a Dunze. And those guys are some studs. And talking about those later round guys, Ladd McConkey, I know that's a guy Georgia fans would absolutely love. I think he's going to be a stud. He could be available in the second round. What do you think about Ladd McConkey potentially somewhere in this draft? Maybe even the Falcons trade back. I don't think there's anything they can't do in the position that they are in.
100%. And that's why you like what you've seen from Terry Fontenot, what they've done so far. It's given them a ton of flexibility. And I was actually going to bring that up, trading back in the first round. Maybe that's something they're looking into, because maybe they don't love all those wide receivers or, you know, those guys kind of at the top. I know there's a couple tackles and stuff like that are kind of in that area of that number 8 overall pick. Or maybe Minnesota wants to trade up and get a quarterback to replace Kirk Cousins. You know, there's a ton of options, and Terry Fontenot's phone is definitely going to be ringing with some of those options. I think that's what's cool about what they've done. It gives them a ton of flexibility to move back, maybe get some more picks or get something in the future out of trading back, and still addressing a need later on with an edge rusher. Cornerback, I think, is, you know, another kind of dark horse pick that they could go in the first round or early on with their first pick. But yeah, I mean, they have a ton of flexibility and options in front of them to do whatever they see fit.
Yeah, I think regardless of what they do in the first round, second round, third round, whatever they do in the rest of the free agency or trades, whether it's a stopgap guy at that edge like Jadeveon Clowney, 1 year stopgap, Hassan Reddick, a trade and extend candidate. We all expect an AJ Terrell contract extension. I think I speak for all Falcons fans and people like you who cover the team. We're just a bunch of fans. Everybody is just actually excited. I know we were all excited last year because we just thought Ritter only had to distribute the ball. Now we actually have a distributor. We have a point guard who's a proven point guard, and Kirk Cousins, by the way, was on pace for 5,000 yards, 40 touchdowns. By the time when he went down with the injury, he was playing like a top 5 quarterback in the league, arguably the top quarterback in the conference. Speak to maybe if who you talk to in the industry, other fans. There's like palpable excitement around the team, and Sundays again in Mercedes-Benz Stadium are gonna be fun.
Yeah, I mean, that's also 100% how I feel, for sure. Like, I mean, I think a lot of us watched the quarterback series on Netflix, saw Kirk Cousins, and kind of, he was very much a darling of that whole thing. I mean, I didn't have a huge opinion of him prior to that, but watching that, I was like, wow, I really want to root for that guy. Like, he just seems like such a good, genuine guy, and like just such a hard worker, like a warrior. That episode about, you know, he's all bruised up and everything. I mean, just seeing that kind of behind the scenes look was really cool. And now that he's the quarterback of the team I cover, it's like kind of cool to have seen that. But yeah, I mean, I'm super excited. Kirk is just such a nice guy. I met him the other day when he had his introductory press conference, and just wants to meet every person, put a face or a name to the face, and just is a really good, genuine guy. And I hope I could see how he's going to bring that into a locker room and bring it, you know, with some of these younger guys that maybe haven't had that leadership around them since they've been here. I think that's going to be a huge portion of what he brings as well. But yeah, no, I think the excitement is very high to see him with so many playmakers. I mean, it's something like you said, we talked about last year, like, man, they have so many guys that, skill position players that are going to make plays and be able to do so much on this team. It just didn't really work out that way because of the quarterback play. So now that you add that piece, I'm so excited to see what it actually translates to onto the field. I will say, though, I have seen a ton of pessimism about this just on Twitter and stuff. And I mean, I'll take it with a grain of salt because Twitter is what it is. But
yeah. Golly.
But I feel like, the people who are mad probably are loudest and type with all.
I feel very strongly about this. I went on a rant the other day on one of our shows because we get those comments on YouTube and Twitter. And I ask you, Falcons fans, I don't know where you grew up, Kelly, but we grew up in Atlanta. And I ask you, Falcons fans, you think we're too good for Kirk Cousins? I don't understand what world you're living in. This isn't the world-renowned Green Bay Packers or the San Francisco 49ers who constantly go to the NFC Championship. We are the Falcons. We have not been to the playoffs since 2017. We haven't won the division since 2016. I mean, this is a team that isn't notoriously, successful. Kirk Cousins, for a majority of his career, I think Chase did a piece on it. I mean, he's been averaging 4,000 plus yards and 30 touchdowns for the past 4 seasons prior to last year. Kirk Cousins is a very good quarterback. And other than Matt Ryan, what real success have we had, guys? I think Matt Ryan has made a lot of Falcons fans delusional. And I guess Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder wasn't enough to make you feel like we're getting a good guy in Kirk Cousins. I went off. I couldn't believe Falcons fans are just disgruntled about getting a good quarterback after what we just watched.
I agree. It's the saying, you can't have nice things. I feel like it's funny that you mentioned that Falcons fan standards are so high because I agree. And they should be, right? You want your team to succeed. You want your team to get all the best players possible and all that kind of thing. My thing is they got the best quarterback available out there on the market at this time. And we don't know what, they were possibly asking for Justin Fields, in a trade, but we saw what ended up happening. And that was, you could argue that Desmond Ridder had about the same value on a trade.
Yeah, that's great.
You could argue that he had more. Mac Jones as well. I was personally shocked the Falcons got anything other than a box of footballs for Desmond Ridder. And no offense, Desmond Ridder was by all accounts a good guy. But speaking on the negativity of the Falcons, because yes, obviously there's always going to be negative people. But the one thing that I noticed about Kirk Cousins' introductory press conference, and the same thing with Raheem Morris, is those guys are kind of beaming balls of positive energy that the more that Falcons fans get, introduced to them and realize who they are as people beyond just what's on the field and the kind of camaraderie that they're going to have in the locker room. I thought those guys at both their press conferences just really stood out as positive people. And I think that the opposite could be said about Arthur Smith and stuff like that.
Terry Fontenot is the golden retriever to Arthur Smith's black cat. And Raheem Morris kind of fits that with Kirk Cousins a little bit too.
Yeah. And it's all fun and games until you you can win the press conference, but you got to win games too. So, all that stuff's going to ring hollow until they get on the football field and win games. And one of my favorite things that Kirk said in his press conference was, the chains, the swag, all the fun stuff that he does. That's all great, but you have to win. That's not fun and that's not cute if you don't win. And I think that is the perfect mentality going into all of this, because it's that's what he came here to do. He even said he wants to retire a Falcon, which is crazy to think about. And for him to actually say that, he wants to team wins just as much as the fans want to see those wins. His family is full of Falcons fans. He said he's been on the couch next to his father-in-law watching Falcons football on bye weeks or whatever the last couple of years, and he's seen firsthand the passion of Atlanta sports fans. So I think that's a really cool perspective that not a lot of people who would have come here from a different place might have had. And I hope that Falcons fans and Atlanta sports fans appreciate how much he cares, because he really does. It's personal for him. And I think I hope that we see that translate on the field.
Yeah, it really does feel like this was kind of a perfect marriage if he wasn't going to stay in Minnesota. All the stars aligned and it really just worked out. And hopefully it works out on the field. Thank you so much for joining us, Kelly. We really appreciate it. Looking forward to have you back in the future.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. I appreciated it.